이것이 나의 완전한 힘이다.
Woo!
넌날 막을 수 없다.
Woo!
7K dreamer please.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be checking out Mythical Vegan Kris and his remake in Arena again, and of course he is the Death King. I basically took out one hero. I think Eve. I took out Eve. Yeah. So I took out Eve to try Kris in this meta team. Now how this team works is that it will rely on death from Gerard and Kris, and it will also rely on the defense increase from Gerard, and also rely on the defense drop from Dylan's. And I also have a Dillo on the field, so we will observe the damage output. Of course, I also have Fire and Judas here for Agnes Flame as well as Fear, like Judas is using now. So it's really rely on CC. You can see that Judas' damage output did increase quite a bit. He doesn't usually do that much. Okay, so he does strike pretty hard. And here Kris uses his bottom skill. It deals 600% damage, so wow, that was pretty hard. Yeah, he hit pretty hard. So I think there's a certain aspect of Dillo that is coming through, but I cannot be sure if he completely reduces defense, okay, with Dylan's on the field. Yeah, so Kris is just going brr in this entire battle. I didn't even have time to talk about his skills. Yeah, so his bottom skill, he deals 600% to 3 enemies, the highest physical attack and magic attack, 80% chance to apply death, and also decreases buff duration by 1 turn. Oh, here Gerard instantly kills off the Melee. So Gerard is actually my speed leader, and Kris is actually my counter hero, which is a very unique and different way of arranging things. The reason why is because I need Gerard to survive, so I really gave him the block. Okay, I kept the block on him so that he's able to survive, and Kris here is the one that has the increased skill use chance and also the increased counter damage as well. But we'll talk about his build later on. So just to go on about his top skill, which I don't think he'll be using since he's asleep. His top skill deals 500% to 4 enemies, has 75% chance to apply death, and also reduces enemy status effect resist by 30%. So this actually is the same effect as his own passive. However, his passive only applies to the front row, so if he manages to land the top skill on the back row, then that's a bonus for you. Okay. His awakened skill is very strong now. It not only applies death and also applies fear. Okay. So I think in this setup, he also buffs the block rate of your allies, right? So he will really buff the tankiness of most of your units, especially my red grade who is on full block. In fact, I think with that block rate increase, I may not even need to give her full block. I can afford to give her 1 HP armor and she will still have 100% block rate. Okay. As you can see here, the death team is doing work extremely fast. It's not even a death team, that's the thing. Okay, but this team is killing off enemies extremely quickly because there's so many CC going on, and there's also a very devastating CC from Fi, which is the Agnes Flame. So it not only relies on death, so even if I meet a Gelidus, I will not be super scared because I can still rely on a lot of CC, that can cripple the enemy in a different way. And that's something that you can also think about when you're crafting a team, because if you're planning to go with a death team and you run into a Gelidus, you are pretty much cut, completely walled by Gelidus unless you kill the Gelidus off and you have tons of turn decrease. But usually that's not the case because 12 turns is definitely pretty significant. Okay, so in this team you will rely on different kind of strategies and RNG to get your way through, but overall it's still very strong. After all, you're still relying on death for the most part, and the death does happen from time to time because Kris and Gerard have a pretty good casting, I would say. Even though there are times when the enemy has 90% resist rate, or even more, and my Kris completely doesn't hit through with the death unless Gerard reduces it. So that is the only drawback with this team if you're planning to use Kris, because Kris will have difficulty in penetrating through the resistance since he only has 75% or 80% chance to apply death, and if they have 90% chance or more resistance, then it's going to be pretty difficult. Thankfully in this team we do have Red Grid and Gelidus who can reduce status effect resistance, so it's pretty good. Okay, Dylan's is here to really allow you to do more damage. And of course Fi is just a mega killer, as we all know. Even if you are completely, walled by the enemy, the Agnes Flame will just hit through like nobody's business. And in fact, I think if you see this battle, it does not exactly rely on death. Even though, Kris at the end still killed with death, but it doesn't completely rely on death. And this is the new death team I have constructed. It's basically almost the same except that I took out 5 Dylans and Colt for Nox, Eileen, as well as, who's that? Wukong, because I need the buff. And as you can see, even on turn 1, I killed 2 enemies right away. That is how strong Nox passive is, because it reduces death resist from the get-go by 30%. So even if, this Gerard skill doesn't happen, you will still have a passive 30% drop in death resistance on the enemies, so which is extremely good. And here Kris just wipes out very easily with his counter effect attack and death proc. So it's extremely fast. There you go, there you go. This team uses a Scout, and I'll talk about her in another video. The Scout doesn't do too much damage to me, which is very sad. However, I have to say that Scout is an amazing support for the Eve, as you will see later on. And of course, Scout does stun everyone on my team amazingly. So yeah, as we are still watching this, I will start to talk about Kris's build. My Kris is actually built pretty interestingly. He is on double speed, okay, for effect attack purposes. He is on double HP, okay, but he still has 100% counter because of his passive. His passive increases counter rate for the same role allies, including himself, by 50%. So he innately has 50% counter, and with his exclusive items, 60% counter. So that's why I can afford to go with double HP on him. Okay, but before we move on, look at this. My Nox reduces magic attack. Eve is incredibly tanky, by the way, because of the lifesteal, and with Scout she lifesteals a lot. And yes, thankfully my Nox killed it. Okay, for accessory, Willful Ring and Death Ring, okay, if I have attacked twice, it will be even better on him. And then for his traits, I've given him 3 resistances: Electrify, Blind, as well as Death. We are facing a Death team, by the way, and this is a Gelidus Death team, so you can see how strong this team is in comparison to mine. And just a heads up, I did lose to this team, okay? But just observe, where I will quickly go through the rest of the equipment. For Fighter Soul, I've given him, increased defense, reduced damage from offensive and magic, increased counter rate, and increased status cast rate. Now I do give him increased counter rate here so I can offset from the armor, but if you do not have the Fighter Soul for the counter rate, then give him 1 counter armor. Just try to make sure you have very high counter on him. And as you can see, my Gerard is already down thanks to the enemy's Kris. In fact, I felt that my death resist is actually lower than him somehow, even though my entire team is on death. Yeah, and my heroes are just dying one by one. You see, I cannot proc the death because of his immunity. What am I talking about? Yeah, it's because of his immunity. I have no freaking way that I can penetrate through, and that's the most unfortunate part. So things like this, you can also learn from it. Whether you do want to incorporate Gelidus into your death team so that you basically get protected from all the crazy stuff. Otherwise, things like that could happen. Gerard goes, then Kris goes and kills off, first turn kills off 2 enemies on the front line already. So you're really dealing with a 7v5 situation, which is really amazing. And if Nox kills off 3, so by turn 2 he's already down to 2 enemies, and it's quite incredible, I would say. Turn 3, we are down to turn 3, and I think he's almost dead.
압도적인
My thoughts of the dev team is that it's definitely a very fun team. Okay, it's fun if you are the user, but if you are the victim of the dev team, then you know it's almost like just quit. it's really difficult to win, especially if your team is already crippled down to a few people. And interestingly, you know, when doing all these test battles, I was thinking, is this the way to actually go past the buff disable passives from Wukong, Dillons and Yonhee? Because, you know, to be honest, halfway during testing I actually forgot that I needed Wukong, yeah, on the universal team. So I really just used dev units. And I could win some fights, I could not win some fights, and of course if I meet a Rudy I'm completely dead. But yeah, it made me think whether it's actually possible, you know, that they are trying to bring back the dev team to bypass this buff disable thing, because it hits through so hard, and if you don't have dev resistance, you know, you're screwed. Even if the enemy has dev resistance, there are units that reduce dev resistance, and I think that's the whole idea behind the dev team right now.
나의 여인에 더 이상 자비는 없다.
이제 끝이.
And it's very unfortunate here that the Milia just hit through without touching my red grid. I don't know how. Yeah, but she really just did that. But in any case, let's talk about Kris probably in a 5v5 setting. Now in a 5v5 setting, I think it's even more dangerous to have Kris, because you probably will run a universal team with Gerard, maybe Eileen, Judas, Kris, Gerard, and potentially Nox. But Nox will go down very quickly because it is a 5v5 setup, so he won't have the possibility to avoid attacks, because your targeting is going to be very narrow, right? The enemy's targeting will probably hit the Nox, unlike in this case. So you may think of using red grid, you may think of using Nox. I think that kind of team will work in a 5v5. In a 5v5, Kris will do a lot more because his targeting is 3 and 4 targets, so it is very likely that matches will go extremely fast in a 5v5 setup. Oh, you do probably need Wukong though for the buff disable. So Wukong, Judas or Nox, Kris, Eileen and Gerard. Yeah, I think that could work. Or you can go with Wukong, Red Grid, Eileen, Kris and Gerard. Yeah, that will probably be one of the dev team variations in a 5v5 setup. Before today, actually, I think Kris actually deserved a remake, because as I mentioned before, his single target skill previously was really bad, and I didn't like his exclusive item. I didn't like how the immortality was on exclusive item and not on the passive. And now we are getting everything correct. And this team is working pretty well, as you can see.
넌 날 막을 수 없다.
이런 녀석에게.
The only thing that I think this team is pretty weak against is, you know, damage wise, we are not relying on damage, but defense wise, it can be pretty iffy, especially if you don't have very good gear. Okay, especially since we have Nox as well. So defense wise, you really have to have very good bulk for the dev team right now. And this battle ended really quickly because of all the Kris and Gerard shenanigans. So dev team is definitely viable right now, so you may want to give it a try. Do like this video and subscribe to my channel. Shout out to my channel members Nick Eclipse, ZMD Phoenix, Reggie Bautista and Doppelganger. Stay tuned for more guys. Thank you so much and see you.